So I'm just gonna open up my stopwatch thing so I can keep a track on timing, and we're going to give the candidates 2 minutes to speak. And so, Edwin, do you want to start off by saying why you think you should be the NaSTA chair next year?
Oh, go on then. Okay, so I wanted to run through a few things. Obviously, I am rerunning. I wanted to sort of split this into two things: things I want to continue doing for the previous year, and sort of new things I want to do. So things I want to continue: engagement. So I think we've made really big progress this year in terms of engagement. As I say, the station manager group chat, that's new, and various other things. There's obviously further to go, and the fact we haven't quite reached quorum proves that. So I want to keep going with that and keep thinking of new ways of increasing engagement. I want to find more purpose for NaSTA. So I think NaSTA has become sort of just an awards and not much else. So I'd really like to see NaSTA have more of a purpose beyond that. Information as well. So NaSTA has, I think, some issues with getting information out and information being easily accessible to stations. So I'd like to improve that as well. Collaboration, not necessarily just stations collaborating with each other, but in terms of making content, but stations collaborating in terms of sharing ideas and sharing technical and other kind of know-how. There's a lot of expertise and a lot of skill out there within stations that's not necessarily able to be shared as much as I'd like it to be able to be. I'm running out of time here. RDOs, I'd like a full team of RDOs. Support, I want to find more ways to support stations, particularly with COVID and particularly with losses of funding from SUs. I really want NaSTA to be a service that can help stations deal with SUs, because I know that can be very, very difficult. And I've got quite a lot of experience from my time at university dealing with SUs. And now, things I want to do that are new. Stability. I want to get a new host for 2022 before AGM for 2021. So we're not panicking at the last minute trying to find a host. I want to do all the sort of work to find someone ahead of time. Organisation, I'd like to have a huge sort out of all the NaSTA documentation because it's a bit of a mess. I'm sure many of you don't know how to find stuff on it, so I want to do a big sort out of that. And big projects, I'd like to do a second Student Opportunities Festival. That's being talked about. Other things, regular sessions, services, partnerships, all that kind of stuff. I'll finish. I came in since last year saying that, you know, Student TV has given me a lot and I wanted to give back.
If you could finish now.
I've got more to give.
Excellent, thank you, Edwin. And Joe, do you want to go up next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I know Andrew mentioned diversity earlier, but I never mentioned it in the show last night. My aim was to showcase Northern and LGBT plus talent in the industry. 63% of our judges and crew were for NaSTA 2020 were LGBT, which is something that I wanted to make happen, and that's something that I want to see through the rest of the year. Now, my main manifesto point is a huge reboot. I'm seeing this year as a brand new start. So from the moment, if I am elected chair, I want a brand new brand identity for NaSTA, and one that I hope stations can really use as a seal of approval. Being a NaSTA station is a really big deal, and I want to get that across more. I want to expand as well. If you refer a station, we will waive your affiliation fee. So essentially, if you refer a brand new station, they pay. Your station doesn't have to affiliate. Doesn't have to pay to affiliate. I want to add a brand new live event to the NaSTA schedule, a national relay, so a day of live streaming from one central hub. As we're a station, as Keys is part of a global relay for journalism, so I want to bring that to us as well. So add that as a massive staple as part of our calendar as well. Having a chair that's closely linked with the host station for 2021 could work out really well with direct lines of communication between the exec and the host team as well. And I want an exec team around me that are so ambitious and just insane with mad ideas and who aren't afraid to try new things as well. This whole year, I just want to reinvoke that sense of community and togetherness amongst the stations. So more cross-station collaboration. Yes, the awards are a huge part of our year, but especially this coming year more than ever, I believe that it should focus heavily on creating as much content as possible. So if you elect me, there will be dramatic sort of changes, but ones that will all be for the better, because I feel like NaSTA needs like a massive kick into the 21st century, and I want to start doing more daring. And
10 seconds, Joe.
So yeah, I'd like to propose changes to the upcoming awards cycle, but we will sort all of that out as well. So please vote for me.
Excellent, thank you. And perfectly timed. I think you had about a millisecond or two left to go. Right. Does anyone have any questions for either Joe or Edwin?
Hi. Sorry, I interrupt.
If you go, Connor.
Yeah, hi. So just a question for Joe. So what would be your idea for like a new thing for NaSTA to do? Like, can you give us an example or?
So, for example, with the new live stream relay, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so something like that. So what would this live stream be in theory?
So essentially, we want to do an entire day where a station nominates themselves to essentially become a master control room. So the main host. The idea is that every other station that is affiliated with us will have we'll work out the timings and stuff, either half an hour or an hour of live content that they produce there and then. So their feed comes directly into whichever station nominates themselves as the MCR, and we broadcast that out. So it's essentially one massive show coming from one place, but so it's broadcast from one place, but we have inputs from all of our affiliate stations, which I think is an idea that I proposed a while back in the station managers chat, because it's something that we do at Keys already. We're part of a global news relay. So that happens with journalism students at universities across the country. And I want to bring the same thing to us. And I feel like it could be a massive chance for each station to have their own big day. And it's a way of doing things live, which is what I love most. So that would be my idea.
Right, thanks.
You're very welcome.
Emma, would you like to ask your question?
So well done, both of you. It's probably incredibly nerve-wracking to make that speech. I think you both have a wealth of experience, but obviously every year it comes with people saying they want to completely redo NaSTA and change it entirely. But obviously they're building on like systems that need money and need to do certain things throughout the year. I was just wondering, what experience do you both have that you think non-NaSTA related that will be most relevant to you doing this role, and why should we vote for you based off that experience?
I can go first if you like. So, for example, Keys TV is, well, actually, is Keys TV NaSTA related, would you say, Emma, or can I use that as an example?
Like, do you have any examples of like running organizations, dealing with money, things like that is my question, that preferably aren't like NaSTA? Yeah, can use Keys or YSTV, but okay, not NaSTA.
That's fine. I've got another example. So this probably sounds really odd, but on my gap year, I worked in a trampoline park. If anyone's been, they're great fun. But so my job there was, I started off as a supervisor, sort of just dealing with people. So I got great people management through that. But then beyond that, I was then promoted to assistant manager and then manager, while that person then went on maternity leave. So I have lots of experience when it comes to banking and finances, and holding having a tight hold on the purse strings is the phrase. So that's where my experience comes from. And I'm a tight ass as well. I don't like spending money. So.
Okay, I'm going to call out two things. So YSTV for start. So that's what I did at university. I was station director there for a year and production director for a year. That gave me lots of experience in managing teams and in dealing with money and budgeting and finances, all that kind of stuff. Also, the company I work for currently is a very small live video production company. That gives me experience on the technical side in terms of what can be done on the tech side of NaSTA and helping stations on that, and also experience, because it's a very small company, I do some management work and client work and all that kind of thing. So that all links back to it and gives me a sort of a foot in a sort of slightly strange side of the TV industry, but very much part of the TV industry.
Excellent. Does anybody have any other questions they would like to put to these two candidates?
Kat?
Yeah, so my question is for both Joe and Edwin. And as the both of you would probably know just from previous communications with our previous controller, Sam, a big issue that a lot of the Scottish stations had this year was because of the date being announced quite late, which wasn't Keys TV's fault as they had taken over the hosting later, but it was very expensive for us to travel. And also accommodation was very expensive to look at because it, I think, yeah, there was just like, because it was mostly hotels, which is usually more expensive than the student accommodation that is usually offered. We got ourselves into a situation where due to the event being cancelled late, we couldn't get £300 back of our bus deposit, which actually came directly out of pocket from one of our members. And then we had to use our own budget to pay that member back. So I was just wondering if either of you have any ideas for financial support when it comes to travel or accommodation for stations that are coming a long way, because I know that a lot of the stations are grouped around the like Midlands and North, and that's where the awards usually tend to be held, because that's where the stations who want to host are putting themselves forward. But it is still a lot of money and a lot of travel and planning. So we would just like to see something kind of implemented to make sure that doesn't happen for next year.
I'll start if that's right. So I mentioned in my speech that one of the things, if I was elected, would be make sure that for the next AGM, we already have someone ready to run. So obviously the reason dates and stuff were announced quite late with Keys is because Keys only came on board very late. We hadn't had anyone run for host. So I've been working really, really hard to make sure that we have someone ahead of time. On accommodation, again, that's a sort of a compromise thing that we had to make in order to have hosting manageable at a late time. So obviously if someone got on board earlier, they'd also have more time to manage things like accommodation. I would like to see a host maybe in Scotland in 2022, so that, you know, obviously some people are always going to have to travel quite a lot further than others. And I think part of the way you mitigate that is by making sure that Conference and Awards moves around every year and doesn't just sort of stay in one kind of area. Also, I think you can take a lot of the learnings from the live event last night and apply them to a physical event. So there's no reason, for example, why we can't have live speeches from people on Zoom during a physical event if they can't attend. And same goes with the conference element. There's no reason why the conference element can't include something like the Student Ops Fest on Zoom webinar, as well as being physical.
What I would say for answering your question, we're quite fortunate that we are relatively in the middle of the country. When it comes to 2021, for example, I know this doesn't answer your question as a whole, because obviously someone in London could do 2022 and it doesn't really solve your issue. But in the short term for 2021, Matt and I have been speaking about dates already. So it means that we want to sit down with all of you over the next couple of weeks. I was kind of hoping Matt would be here to tell you this himself, but I kind of feel like I'm taking the words out of his mouth. But he wants to sit down with all of you, as do I, and pick a new date around June, July time. That is kind of what we're throwing around at the moment, because we want to make sure that it works for everyone. And the issue that we did have with accommodation this year was because it was so quickly done. It turns out the Manchester Marathon was on the same weekend that we had picked it, so there was no accommodation left. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise that it didn't happen on that date. So but we do want to sit down with all of you and pick out a date that is most convenient and as cheap as possible, both for accommodation here in Manchester and traveling you guys down. If it means that, for example, we look at the possibility of arranging a coach, you know, like when you go to a festival, like to Reading or something, there's a coach at a certain place and you just buy a ticket to get on that and then it brings you all in one place. So if for Northern, or when we have a look at the different regions, if that is a possibility, it's something that we could definitely look into doing. So you guys just meet a coach and then that coach just brings you to us.
Joshua, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it's a really quick one, but I think it's quite important. To both of you, what do you both individually think is the biggest challenge facing NaSTA over the next year or two? And what are you individually going to do to help solve that?
I can go first if you like, Edwin. Yeah, I would probably say it's relevance. I'm really concerned that the overtake in online media is really going to be an issue for all of us. We've seen the way that our formats have changed is just so drastic over these last few years. I'm concerned that NaSTA will get left behind and become forgotten, and eventually just become a small group of people who still like the old days of television. And that is something that I'm actually really quite scared of it happening. I want to make sure that we can continue to progress and continue to grow. I don't like using the SRA as an example because we shouldn't compare ourselves. However, when you consider that radio is the medium that is facing cuts across the country, the SRA is continuing to grow, and we have to look at ourselves and wonder why. Whether it's something to do with the way that we brand ourselves or the things that we do, the general atmosphere and sense of community amongst the association. That's what we have to try and figure out, and that's what we have to change. So what are they doing right that we aren't? Because it should be the other way around. You know, we should be continuing to grow with all of this online content. But I'm really sorry. I do love radio, for anyone that is in here that loves radio as well. But yeah, we just have to look and think, why are they continuing to grow and why are we stalling when we should be thriving constantly and continuously growing, with TV stations popping up all across the country. You know, we had loads of affiliates last year. There were 33 stations, but we had 20, I think it was like 20 stations out of the 33 sent in entries. So we have to think, why are they signing up and, you know, not engaging with us? So that's the one thing I'm concerned about.
I'm going to pick out engagement again, I think, which Joe touched upon at the end there. I'm not concerned about sort of the move to online, because I think most of you have been broadcasting online for many years, but I think engagement is the big challenge. And in terms of people engaging with NaSTA, not just during awards. And that's where there's a challenge in terms of what we offer throughout the year, whether that is sessions, whether that's training, whether that's other stuff. And I think the key thing there, and it all ties into engagement, is having a full exec team and having a full team running things. Particularly in terms of training, we haven't had a training officer this last year. Why? Well, because no one ran. Why is no one ridden? Because there wasn't enough engagement. Whose fault is that? At the end of the day, it's the exec's fault. There needs to be that engagement so that we have people running, so that we have people running the exec, so that we have people doing stuff, so that there's stuff for people to engage in. And it's just a case of building it slowly and just getting people doing stuff, and just trying to get NaSTA out there as a thing that people are interacting with on a week-by-week basis as part of Student TV, not on a year-by-year basis.
Excellent. Thank you, Edwin and Joe. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm not quite sure how to say your name because it starts YC, so I apologize if I said it wrong.
That's my name. I'm YC. I'm a marketing officer from Real TV. So, question to you both. Just wondering, like, for small stations like ours, so we've got like 4 committee members this year, not a lot of people. So, just wondering, what would NaSTA do to support us through this difficult time? Because we lost our budget, we lost everything, and basically all we could do now is basically one-off. Like, you know, we're doing one-off shows here and there. And I mean, especially for myself, I'm doing a completely different degree. I'm not doing TV. I have a construction degree, funny enough. And yeah, so what kind of stuff would you guys do to help us out, if, you know, for us, especially in final years, that could possibly, you know, if we want to be like, we're super keen on, like, you know, taking on this industry, and also, you know, what will you guys do to support us through when it comes to, like, you know, this whole thing, getting us exposures and stuff, because we need that. Like, we start from scratch like 2 years ago. We worked our way up, and now here we are. We've got no entry whatsoever like last year, but this year we put a lot of stuff out, and yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're doing. But then we just want to do more, and we hope that NaSTA could be sort of like the guiding light for that. Thank you.
I'll start if that's right. Firstly, great to hear you're someone doing student TV who's not doing a TV degree. I was in the same boat, and I think it's really important that lots of people who aren't doing TV degrees are involved in this. I think the main thing for smaller stations particularly that we can offer is support and dealing with SUs. I think an awful lot of SUs don't see the value in student TV, and they don't see the value in giving student TV money. And I think we all know that, you know, you can do a lot of things on a very small budget, but at the end of the day, you need a camera, you need a mic, you know, you need stuff,
time as well.
Funding. So I think one of the big things that we can do is show to SUs, you know, as the sort of the UK-wide representative of student television, it's our job to speak to SUs and to show them that student television is valuable, because we all know it's valuable, and we all know that the industry is absolutely littered with people who are in student TV, and it can be a great thing for universities and a great thing for student unions. but a lot of the time they can't see it and they need to be shown the value. And from doing that, you get the support you need, you get the money you need, and you get the sort of all the other stuff that lets you build up a membership and build up content.
Yeah, Edward makes a really great point. Alongside that, what I continue to see NaSTA as is a central hub of all of the stations that we have. So whoever your next nearest station is, I'd have to look on a map, but whoever your next nearest station is, we would consider, putting the two of you in touch and working on something cross station, which, depending on the arrangement, you could then use as content of your own, and then you help each other out. There will be stations, I know Keys, for example, when it comes to remote like streaming and stuff, we would be more than happy to put you in touch with other stations who I'm sure would want to show off their own technical capabilities as well, where we generate content for you but with the help of other stations. So there's a way that we can use NaSTA to all work together and help each other out. But that point goes alongside exactly what Edwin said, because he makes a very good point.
Cheers, thank you.
Any further questions from anyone, or shall we move on to communicate? Oh, Mary, do you want to ask your question, Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so you both mentioned like getting a host officer for 2022 and beyond sort of a lot sooner than the past couple of years and stuff. I was just wondering like how you plan on encouraging and making the role of host officer attractive and making people want to do it in the future, so that this isn't the same issues that we've had.
I can jump in on that way if you like. So a host officer is an interesting one. It is contrary to what the documentary showed last night. There's a lot to do, but it is great fun. I was so fortunate that I had a great team of people around me. And the thing that is probably most attractive to being a host station is probably the notoriety. Stations that nominate themselves to be host stations, yes, there is a lot of work. It is mostly all fun. But we do need to start thinking about 2022 a little bit earlier. We've kind of taken the weight off by doing 2020 and 21. But we were actually speaking about the idea of two stations near each other working together and doing a joint hosted event. If that's what it takes to have a physical host, then great. We would also consider the idea of removing the host from a host team from the station and bring it on board with NaSTA. So create a host team within the NaSTA exec, and then use resources from stations across the country to have one big collaborative event like that. That's only an option to be considered if people don't like the idea of being a host station, which I don't get why you wouldn't, because it's such a great experience.
Look, I think there are two key things really that I think put people off or worry people about hosting, and that is the amount of work and the financing of it. Now, on the amount of work, I think it's interesting to look at how the other two main student media organisations do this. So the SRA pretty much organise it entirely in-house, and the SPA, Student Publication Association, they have a host station every year, but the exec team does a lot of the work in terms of judging and the actual awards, and the host team sort of do the host station actually do the physical parts, but they don't deal with finding judges or any of that stuff. So I think there's stuff to be looked at in terms of how those responsibilities are shared. I also think we have to look at what's happened to the NaSTA Awards over the last 5 or 10 years, which is that they've got bigger and bigger and fancier and fancier, and that is fantastic. But it also means they've got more and more daunting to host, and they can be a really, really, really big thing. And that also ties into the other thing, financing. The way it basically works every year is that the host station has to sort of get the financing guaranteed and supplied by either the students' union or the university, depending on how that station is run. Obviously, in theory, the NaSTA Awards breaks even or makes a profit, but there needs to be that money there in the first place to pay for everything before the ticket sales come in. And there needs to be some kind of financial guaranteeing. Now, that is really hard to get. And for that, you need to have a really good relationship with either your students' union or your university to make that happen. And that's only going to get harder with COVID and with slashed budgets and that kind of thing. So I think we need to take a really close look at potentially how we can make hosting a little bit of a smaller job, and also how we can make it a little bit of a smaller load financially. And it comes back to what I was saying before about those relationships with SUs and helping out in terms of how you deal with your SU or your university, because that kind of relationship is key to actually being able to host.